are still alive. I'd like to welcome our guest at this hour, James Zogby, the founder and president of the Arab American Institute. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. We've heard this report of Israel slowing or stopping aid into parts of northern Gaza. We do know that as of Friday, the military has ended a policy of pausing daytime operations there that were meant to allow aid in. What will the consequences of this be?
Well, northern Gaza has been the victim of a freeze on aid and a slowdown of aid now for many, many months now. It's new that some aid was going in, and Israel was, in fact, really impeding it. A complete cutoff will be devastating. There might be as many as 1 million people left in the northern part of Gaza, and they are underserved at best. Starved is a way to put it. They're victims of most losing their own homes and living in shelters and being forced, even within that contained area, to move because of the shelling. So look, this is a slow motion genocide that is unfolding, and it's unconscionable that people are not acting more decisively to bring it to an end.
Now, at the UN General Assembly next month in New York, there is a push from some Western countries toward recognizing a Palestinian state. And I want to ask you specifically, as the president of the Arab American Institute, how much U.S. public support there would be behind such a move?
Oh, we've polled on that, actually, and as have YouGov and The Economist and many other places. And there is significant support for that. The question, however, I ask is, does it make a difference at this point? What needs to be the demand is not that there be a Palestinian state, but that Israel end both its assault on Gaza and in the West Bank, and an end to the occupation. Short of that, this is going to continue. Israel is emboldened by the nations of the world recognizing a Palestinian state. They say, look, you recognize on paper and we seize on the ground. And they've been confiscating more land, building new settlements, announcing more settlements, and continuing this assault on Gaza. They are not moved by gestures of this sort. They will be moved by what, as you said in your earlier story, by concrete actions as those proposed by Spain, the Netherlands, and Ireland to take action to make Israel pay a price, just as we made South Africa pay a price for continuing apartheid. This is at some point even worse than just apartheid. There is apartheid, but there's also this genocide that's unfolding.
It's interesting, isn't it? I'm wondering what you make of what we saw earlier this summer with certain European countries essentially holding Palestinian statehood as a kind of threat to Israel unless it improved the humanitarian situation in Gaza.
Again, look, Israel's a spoiled child, and I've seen spoiled children in my lifetime where parents say, we'll do this if you don't, and then they continue to do it and nothing happens. There are no consequences. When there are no consequences for bad behavior, people become emboldened to do even worse things. And that's what's happening right now. Israel's seeing no consequences, and therefore, why stop? And we've been following the Israeli press. I have been, and see that Netanyahu, his party, and most of the others in the opposition do not want to end this assault on Gaza, do not want to end the occupation and new settlement in the West Bank. And so, frankly, we're dithering about while this horrific situation is continuing, and they just keep going. There's nothing to stop them, and so why stop? They continue to get aid, they continue to get support, they continue to get diplomatic backup, and so they continue. This is a genocide happening on our watch, and we will, decades from now, lament the fact that we didn't do more to stop it.
So you've hinted there at some of the consequences that could theoretically be imposed on Israel. What do you think it would take to actually get Western states to do so?
If genocide, mass starvation, the massacre of 62,000 people at least, 11,000 children now wounded without families, the rest of their families destroyed, 80% of the dwellings in Gaza destroyed. If that's not enough to make countries move, I don't know what is. There seems to be a sense of, I would say, almost bigotry that Palestinian lives don't matter. The Israeli hostages, yes, we care about them, but we can't allow the suffering of those hostages to drown out the pain being endured daily by hundreds of thousands, millions of people in Gaza. And think about the next generation. What are these kids who have grown up in this circumstance now for 2 years? What's going to happen to them in 20 years from now? We have allowed not just a genocide to occur, but actually the destruction of an entire culture and people who will be paying a price for this for a generation or more. And we're letting it happen. So frankly, we got to take action to stop it. And I know the U.S. is dithering and doing nothing. Not dithering, they're doing nothing. But the nations of Western Europe and the Arab states are doing very little themselves, other than making pronouncements, making threats. But at the end of the day, there has to be a suspension of aid, like the Hague group that met in Colombia. People have to say, countries have to say, you will not use our ports for shipment of trade. You will not use our ports for shipment of weapons. You will not have trade relations with us. We are going to punish you until you stop this bad behavior. Not the way UK did, which is if you don't do this, this, or this, we'll recognize a Palestinian state. Israel will say, go ahead and recognize the Palestinian state. We'll do it anyway. What has to happen is action has to be taken to make them pay a price, just as we did with South Africa. It worked.
Well, thank you so much
And it can
for
work.
sharing your thoughts there. I'm afraid that's all we have time for at this moment, but I want to thank you so much for sharing your perspective. We've been speaking with James Zogby, the founder and president of the Arab American Institute.
Thank you.
We do want to turn to this story. Ukrainian police